On the morning of her wedding, Amara thought she was walking toward the happiest moment of her life. The sky was clear, the flowers were perfect, the guests were dressed in silk and perfume and smiles. The musicians were already tuning their instruments, and the marble fountain in the center of the estate sparkled under the afternoon sun like something out of a dream. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked flawless. And at the center of it all was Amara. She stood in front of the mirror in a white gown so beautiful it made her mother cry the moment she saw it. Her veil flowed over her shoulders like mist. Her makeup was soft, elegant, and untouched by fear. Because at that moment, Amara still believed she was loved. She still believed Damian was the man who had chosen her for her heart. She still believed that by sunset, she would be a wife. What she did not know was that before that day was over, her body would crash into cold fountain water in front of every guest, every camera, every relative. And the wedding they had all gathered to celebrate would become the scandal no one would ever forget. Because just a few minutes before walking down the aisle, Amara heard something she was never supposed to hear. And once she heard it, nothing could ever go back to the way it was. But before we go further, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because what Amara heard next changed everything. Amara did not come from old money. She was not born into mansions, trust funds, or polished family names that opened doors before people even knocked. She was the daughter of a school teacher and a seamstress. She grew up in a small but loving home, the kind where curtains were hand-stitched and every achievement was celebrated like a national holiday. She was not the richest woman Damian had ever met, but she was the kindest. She met Damian 2 years earlier at a charity gala she had only attended because her boss had fallen sick at the last minute and asked her to represent the foundation. She had worn a simple navy dress, no diamonds, no flashy introductions, and no famous surname attached to her. Yet somehow, in a room full of women who looked like luxury magazine covers, Damian noticed her. Or at least, that was what he told her. He said he was drawn to the way she listened before she spoke, the way she smiled with her whole face, the way she cared more about the children the charity served than the cameras in the room. He called her rare. And Amara, who had spent most of her life believing that quiet goodness was invisible in a loud world, believed him. Damian was everything people admired. Tall, smooth, educated abroad, son of a wealthy real estate family, charming enough to win over strangers in minutes. The kind of man who made waiters stand straighter and women lower their voices when he entered a room. When he chose Amara, people talked. Some said she was lucky. Some said she was clever. Some said she had somehow found a way to catch a rich man who should have married someone from his own world. Amara ignored them, because when Damian looked at her, he made her feel chosen, not rescued. He said she calmed him. He said he was tired of fake women, tired of performance, tired of people who loved his money more than his soul. With her, he claimed, life felt honest. And Amara believed honesty when she heard it, at least in the beginning. But love stories rarely crack all at once. They crack quietly. First, it was the calls Damian would take outside. Then it was the way his mother, Mrs. Kalu, smiled at Amara with lips that never reached her eyes. Then it was his childhood friend Selena, always near him, always adjusting his tie, always speaking as if she had known his thoughts before he did. Amara noticed these things, but every time she brought them up, Damian kissed her forehead and called her dramatic. "You're overthinking," he would say softly. My mother is just traditional. Selena is practically family. You have to stop seeing danger everywhere. So Amara tried. She adjusted. She swallowed discomfort in the name of maturity. When Mrs. Kalu criticized her accent in front of guests, Amara smiled. When Selena made jokes about girls from humble backgrounds suddenly becoming madam, Amara ignored her. When Damian postponed introducing her to certain business associates, saying they were not important, Amara told herself timing was everything. Because that is what good women are often taught to do. Endure first. Ask questions later. Still, there were moments that clung to her. One evening, 3 months before the wedding, she arrived at Damian's apartment with homemade food, only to hear laughter inside. Not ordinary laughter, intimate laughter. She froze outside the half-open door and heard Selena say, "If she ever finds out the real reason you're marrying her, she will collapse." Damian laughed too. But when Amara walked in, both of them went quiet. He told her they had just been discussing family pressure and business politics. He said Selena had a dark sense of humor. He said she had misunderstood. And because she loved him, Amara let the moment die before it had a chance to live. The wedding planning moved fast after that. The venue was selected by Damian's family. The guest list was controlled by his mother. The flowers were chosen by Selena, under the excuse that she had better taste for high society events. Even the wedding dress, though paid for by Damian, came with Mrs. Kalu's warning. "Do not embarrass us," she had said. "This family's name is now sitting on your shoulders." Amara should have walked away then. But love can make prison look like commitment when the bars are decorated with flowers. There was only one person who openly disliked the marriage enough to say it to Amara's face. Damian's aunt, Evelyn. She was sharp-tongued, observant, and strangely kind under all her bitterness. 1 week before the wedding, Aunt Evelyn pulled Amara aside and said, "Child, some rooms smile at you while sharpening knives behind the curtain. Listen carefully in this family. They reveal themselves when they think you are not in the room." Amara had laughed nervously. At the time, she thought it was just the bitter warning of an older woman who enjoyed drama. But on the day of the wedding, those words came back like prophecy. The ceremony was set for 4 in the afternoon. By 3:30, the estate was full. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Waiters floated through the garden with silver trays. Guests gathered under white floral arches. A live quartet played soft music near the fountain. Photographers moved like hunters, capturing every smile, every ring, every staged embrace. Amara sat in the bridal suite while her makeup artist fixed the final edge of her lip color. Her heart was racing, but not from fear, from anticipation. She remembered her father's words before he passed away years earlier. "Marry the man who protects your dignity, not the man who merely praises your beauty." Today, she believed she was doing exactly that. Then her maid of honor, Tessa, entered the room looking pale. "Amara," she whispered, "have you seen Selena?" Amara frowned. "No. Why?" Tessa hesitated. "I saw her come out of Damian's private lounge. She looked strange." Amara felt a chill, small but sharp. It meant nothing, she told herself. Still, something restless rose inside her. She stood up and said she needed air. Her makeup artist protested. The planner panicked. But Amara smiled and slipped out through the side corridor that led toward the inner courtyard. The estate was large, and behind the main ceremony lawn there were several private rooms reserved for the groom and his family. The corridor was quiet. too quiet. Then she heard voices. Damian's voice, Selina's voice, and Mrs. Kalu. Amara stopped walking. The door ahead was not fully shut. She could not see them clearly, but she could hear every word. Mrs. Kalu spoke first. "I still say this has gone far enough. Once the marriage certificate is signed and the merger is secured, I do not want unnecessary delays. We cannot afford scandal." Amara frowned. "Merger?" Then Damian answered. "There won't be any scandal if Amara stays in her place. She still thinks this is about love." Selina laughed softly, a laugh Amara would never forget. "And if she starts asking questions?" Selina asked. Damian replied, cool and effortless. "Then she'll get exactly what she was always meant to get. A title, a house, maybe a child if necessary. But let's not pretend I'm doing this because I'm in love with her." The world inside Amara's chest stopped. Mrs. Kalu spoke again, voice low and sharp. "You should have married Selina from the beginning." "I know," Damian said. "But Selina does not soften the public the way Amara does. Amara is perfect for optics. Humble background, clean image, charity work, sympathetic face. Investors love that. The board loves that. The public will eat it up." Selina sighed. "After all the sacrifices I made for you." "You'll be compensated," Damian said. "You know how this ends. Once the company deal is sealed, I'll fix everything." Then came the sentence that broke whatever hope was still breathing inside Amara. "I never loved Amara," he said. "I only needed her." Amara stepped back as if the words themselves had struck her. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her vision blurred. The corridor spun. Inside the room, chairs moved. Glass clinked. Selina said something else, but the blood roaring in Amara's ears swallowed it whole. She took another step back. Her heel caught the smooth edge of the marble path beside the courtyard fountain. Then it happened. Her body lost balance. Her arms flew out, and before she could scream, she crashed sideways into the black stone basin of the fountain in front of dozens of guests. The water exploded upward. Her veil whipped through the air. People gasped. Musicians stopped playing. A child screamed. Cameras turned instantly. The bride, the radiant, perfect bride, was suddenly soaked, half submerged in the fountain, like a woman dropped from heaven into public humiliation. And across the courtyard, Damian came running. "Amara!" To everyone watching, he looked terrified. Like a devoted groom rushing to save the woman he loved. But Amara, cold and shaking in the water, saw him for what he really was for the first time. Not a savior, a performer. He reached out both hands. "What happened? Are you okay?" Amara stared at him. The guests circled closer. Some whispered, some recorded on their phones before staff tried to stop them. Mrs. Kalu rushed forward in horror, not for Amara, but for the spectacle. Selina stood behind her, face drained of color. For one suspended second, the entire wedding waited for Amara to become the broken woman in the fountain, the embarrassed bride, the fragile victim, the fool. Instead, Amara let Damian help her up. She said nothing, not one word. And that silence frightened him more than tears ever could. She looked at him, with water dripping from her veil, and whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "I heard everything." His face changed, only for a second, but Amara saw it. The fear, the calculation, the instant search for a new lie. He leaned closer. "Amara, listen to me." She pulled her hand away. Guests watched in confusion as Amara straightened herself, soaked gown clinging heavily to her body. The wedding planner rushed over with towels. Tessa came running, crying. Cameras flashed from a distance. But Amara had entered another kind of stillness, a dangerous stillness. The kind that comes after heartbreak, burns away confusion, and leaves clarity behind. She allowed Tessa to lead her back inside. In the bridal suite, everyone talked at once. "Cancel the ceremony. Call the stylist. Dry her dress. Get another veil. Find the priest." But Amara did not answer any of them. She sat in front of the mirror, water dripping onto the floor, and looked at her own reflection. For the first time that day, she was not looking at a bride. She was looking at a woman who had just survived the death of an illusion. Tessa knelt beside her. "Tell me what happened." Amara turned slowly and said, "He never loved me. I was just part of a deal." Tessa's face collapsed. "What?" Amara told her everything. The door, the voices, Selena, the business merger, the board, the lie called love. When she finished, Tessa was shaking with anger. "Then we leave," Tessa said instantly. "Right now. We call the cars, we take your things, and we leave these people to choke on their flowers." Amara almost agreed. Almost. Then she remembered every insult she had swallowed, every smile from Mrs. Kalu that carried poison, every whisper from Selena, every time Damian used tenderness to quiet a truth. She looked back at her reflection. "No," she said quietly. "If I leave now, they control the story." Tessa stared at her. Amara continued, her voice growing steadier. "They'll say I panicked. They'll say I was unstable. They'll protect him. They'll bury me. So what do we do?" Amara's eyes hardened. "We let them continue." Tessa blinked. "What?" "We give them exactly what they expect," Amara said. "A bride who returns." Then she leaned closer. "And then we destroy the performance." What Damian did not know was that Amara was not as alone as he thought. 6 months before the wedding, Aunt Evelyn had quietly given Amara access to certain company documents after noticing irregularities around the merger Damian kept mentioning. At the time, Amara had not fully understood their significance. She only knew Evelyn did not trust the timing of the marriage. Those documents were still in Amara's private email. So was an old voice note accidentally sent to her phone by Selena weeks earlier. A message meant for Damian, full of bitterness and jealousy, where Selena had said, "If you marry her for the company, at least don't expect me to stand there smiling like I'm not the woman you actually want." Amara had never confronted Damian with it because he had convinced her it was harmless. Now, harmless had become evidence. Tessa quickly locked the room and called Aunt Evelyn. To their surprise, the older woman did not sound shocked. "She finally heard the truth?" Evelyn said. "You knew?" Amara asked. "I suspected enough," Evelyn replied. "And if you are ready to stop being their sacrifice, I am ready to stop being polite." Within minutes, a plan formed. The estate's audio-visual team had full access to the central ceremony screens. The wedding live stream, prepared for relatives abroad, was connected to the same system. Aunt Evelyn knew the event manager. Tessa knew how to get into Amara's email. And Amara, soaked and betrayed but no longer blind, knew exactly how to smile long enough to bring the wolves into the light. Outside, the guests were growing restless. Rumors floated across the lawn like smoke. Some said the bride had slipped. Some said it was bad luck. Some said she had fainted. Some whispered that maybe the marriage had been cursed from the beginning. Damian stood near the altar, performing concern with expert precision. He spoke to guests in a controlled voice, thanking them for patience, assuring them Amara was only recovering from a little shock. Selina stood at a distance, pretending to be worried, though her eyes kept searching the bridal corridor. Mrs. Kalu's face was tight with humiliation. Then, 27 minutes after the fountain incident, the music began again. Heads turned. Amara appeared at the far end of the aisle. She had changed. Not the dress, though it had been dried and adjusted just enough to survive the scene. No, it was her face. Her softness was gone. She no longer looked like a woman waiting to be chosen. She looked like a woman who had made a decision. The guests rose slowly. The photographer resumed shooting. Damian exhaled in visible relief. He thought she had broken and then surrendered. He smiled as she approached. "Amara," he whispered when she reached him. "Thank God. We'll talk after the ceremony." Amara smiled back, a smile so calm it unsettled him. "No," she said. "We'll talk now." The officiant, confused, cleared his throat and tried to continue. But Amara gently took the microphone from his hand. A ripple passed through the crowd. Damian's smile froze. "My family, friends, and honored guests," Amara began, voice clear and graceful. "Thank you for being here on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life." Guests nodded politely, unsure. Amara continued. "A few minutes ago, many of you saw me fall into that fountain. Light laughter, awkward and nervous, moved through the crowd. She let it die. At first, I thought it was an accident. But now I realize it was the moment God refused to let me walk blind into a lie." Silence. Damian stepped closer. "Amara." She raised one finger. "No, you've spoken enough." The crowd shifted. Mrs. Kalu stood abruptly. "This is not the place for drama." Amara turned toward her. "You're right. It's the place for truth." Then she nodded toward the AV booth. Behind the altar, the large, decorative screen flickered. Damian turned so fast his chair almost fell. The first thing that appeared was a scanned document from Kalu Holdings regarding a merger strategy memo. The highlighted line read, "Public marriage to candidate with clean humanitarian image to improve investor confidence during transition period." Gasps moved through the guests. Damian's face drained. Then another document appeared, a legal draft referencing post-marital asset restrictions and image management clauses. Then Selina's voice played over the speakers. "If you marry her for the company, at least don't expect me to stand there smiling like I'm not the woman you actually want." Now the crowd was no longer confused. They were awake. Damian lunged toward the audio technician, but Aunt Evelyn herself stepped into view and blocked him with surprising force. "Sit down," she said coldly. Then came the final recording. Not from Selina, from Damian. A clear voice clip extracted from the estate corridor system where his private lounge audio had been archived due to security integration with the event control room. His own voice rang out over the wedding lawn. "I never loved Amara. I only needed her." No one moved. No one breathed. Even the wind seemed to stop. The groom, who had spent years polishing his image, was now standing inside his own confession. Mrs. Kalu looked as if someone had slapped her in public. Selena's tears came instantly, but not from guilt, from exposure. Damian tried to speak, but the crowd had already turned. Some guests lowered their eyes in disgust. Others openly stared. Phones appeared everywhere. One investor near the front row whispered to another and began walking away before the ceremony was even officially broken. Amara stood in the center of it all, no longer shaking. "You called me an image," she said, looking directly at Damian. "You called my life optics. You called my love a tool." Damian stepped forward desperately. "Amara, I can explain." "No," she said sharply. "You can experience." A murmur rose. Then Amara delivered the final blow. "What you forgot," she said, "is that I did not come into this marriage empty-handed." She turned to the guests. "My late father was not a wealthy man, but before his death, he was one of the early legal architects who helped protect several land acquisitions now sitting under Kalu Holdings." Mrs. Kalu went pale. Aunt Evelyn smiled faintly. Amara continued. "When irregularities began appearing around this merger, I did not just cry about them. I documented them. And this morning, before walking back down this aisle, I sent every file in my possession to legal counsel, the press contact your company has tried to silence for months, and the board oversight committee." The estate exploded into noise. Damian staggered back. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Mrs. Kalu shouted her name. Selena burst into tears. The officiant stepped away entirely. And then, for the first time all day, Amara looked at the fountain. The fountain everyone had used as the symbol of her humiliation. She smiled. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said softly. "When I fell into that water, I thought it was the most embarrassing moment of my life." She turned back to Damian. "But now I realize the fountain saved me." The guests were fully on her side now. Not because crowds are noble, but because power always looks weaker once truth tears its costume. Damian's best man took a slow step away from him. Two of Mrs. Kalu's friends quietly gathered their purses and left. One of the investors was already on a phone call, likely protecting himself. And Selena, the woman who thought she would stand behind the bride and win in secret, now stood in front of everyone as proof of the deception. Damian tried one last time. His voice cracked. "Amara, please, don't do this." She stared at him. Then she asked the question that cut deeper than any scream. "When did you decide I was the kind of woman who would die quietly for your convenience?" He had no answer. Because men like Damian never prepare for the moment the woman they underestimated stops asking to be loved and starts demanding justice. Amara handed the microphone back to the stunned officiant. Then she gathered the front of her dress and stepped down from the altar. The guests parted for her, not out of pity, out of respect. Tessa walked beside her. Aunt Evelyn followed. Just before reaching the exit path, Amara paused and turned one last time. "This wedding is over," she said, "but my life is not." Then she walked away. No one stopped her. Not Damian, not his mother, not the woman who had helped deceive her. Behind her, the dream venue became a battlefield of whispers, calls, accusations, and crumbling reputations. The flowers were still beautiful. The fountain still sparkled. The violinists were still standing there. But the performance had ended, and only truth remained. In the weeks that followed, the scandal spread farther than anyone in the Kalu family had imagined. The leaked documents triggered investigations. Investors pulled back. Board members demanded answers. Several internal agreements were frozen. Damian's image, once carefully polished, became the exact kind of story his family had always feared. A rich man who used a good woman as a public strategy and lost everything when she refused to remain silent. Selena vanished from public view. Mrs. Kalu reportedly called Amara 3 times through intermediaries, requesting a private reconciliation meeting. Amara declined every request, not out of cruelty, out of wisdom. Because closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is a door you lock from the inside. As for Amara, she left the city for a while. Not because she was broken beyond repair, but because healing deserves privacy too. She stayed with her mother. She slept. She cried. She prayed. She watched the person she had almost become disappear slowly from her reflection. And in that quiet season, she discovered something power had hidden from her for years. A woman does not need to be chosen to become valuable. She already is. Months later, Amara launched a foundation under her own name, one focused on legal and emotional support for women trapped in manipulative relationships disguised as opportunity. Women who had been used for image, labor, status, silence, or sacrifice. The opening speech was short, but one line from it would later go viral. She said, "If they build a stage to shame you, turn it into a courtroom." And somewhere, in a mansion that had grown much quieter than before, Damian Kalu probably heard those words and understood too late what he had thrown away. Not a bride, not a public image, a real woman. The kind of woman men spend lifetimes pretending they deserve. And maybe that was the real punishment. Not losing the company, not losing the merger, not losing the money, but losing the one person who had loved him sincerely before his lies taught her the value of her own power. So if you ever find yourself crying in the middle of a beautiful place, if the room is expensive, the people are smiling, and yet your spirit is warning you that something is wrong, listen. Listen before the vows. Listen before the signatures. Listen before the applause traps you in a life built on performance. Because some fountains are not there to drown you. Some fountains are there to wake you up. And sometimes the most humiliating moment of your life is only the beginning of your freedom.